Imagine you're sitting across from a client who's been told trauma is stored in your body. They nod along, but then the questions start. Where exactly is it stored? How does this work? Why does my body react this way? How do I get it out? If you're a coach or clinician working with dysregulated clients, then you've likely felt the challenge of providing this neurobiology education in a way that's both accurate and clear, but it also empowers your client to want to change things. I'm Jessica Maguire, and I help make the complex science clear so you feel confident explaining it to your clients. Today I'll show you why effective neuroeducation is often a missing piece for coaches and clinicians and how this impacts their sessions. We'll explore why the oversimplified messages that we often hear through social media can leave our clients feeling confused and disempowered. We'll look at the specific neurobiology that dysregulated clients actually need to understand. We'll look at how proper neuroeducation can lead to top-down regulation, which in turn promotes regulation through emotional centers to do with fear and threat detection. And then we'll look at the 3 C's that can transform your practice: confidence, clarity, and credibility. Now, this isn't just theory. Neuroeducation is a fundamental pillar of nervous system work and can play a pivotal role in creating neuroplastic healing and also update the brain and nervous system's predictions. This is the essence to healing. Dysregulated clients need more education than trauma is stored in your body. Now, whilst this phrase is really popular in wellness spaces, it can leave your clients feeling disempowered and mystified by their symptoms, and they're not sure how to actually help themselves or work with their nervous system. It suggests that trauma is more like a foreign object that's lodged somewhere in the body, and it can simply be released in one session, when the actual process is far more complex, nuanced, and integrated. Your clients deserve a richer understanding of how trauma can change their brain and their body through the process of neuroplasticity. But most importantly, they need the neuroeducation that can change the way that their brain makes predictions about what's going to happen next. So in this way, we say that education can bring top-down regulation. So what do dysregulated clients actually need to know? The first place we can start is with the memory systems. So traumatic stress especially impacts what we call implicit memory systems. Now, explicit memories are the ones that you can consciously recall. So these are things like your 5th birthday. You might be able to bring to mind the visual of that and see who was at your birthday party, the cake that you had, your parents, and the setting. Unlike explicit memories that we consciously recall, implicit memories carry out below the level of conscious awareness, and they create these automatic responses like bracing, collapsing, a racing heart, or the strong sensations in our gut. Now, these implicit memories are largely carried out through the sensory systems. So the sensory system of interoception can lead to overwhelming sensations, those that are too loud, or for some people it can lead to dissociation, where they can't tune into sensations at all. For some people, the proprioceptive system is impacted, and this is typically the position that we know that we are in space. So this can create these automatic postural shifts. When clients understand that they can retrain both of their sensory systems and their implicit memory system, they are empowered. They can learn the resources that impact how these systems automatically respond so they don't feel helpless and out of control. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to overwhelm your clients with complexity. It means facilitating a genuine conversation based on what they're telling you, in a language that they can understand, and in a way that's meaningful for them and their lives. Now, there's a world of difference between neuroeducation that explains the communication patterns of the brain-body system and how we can change that, versus vague statements about trauma being stored in the body. And think about how that might land for your particular client. Your clients automatically become more engaged when they understand that they can play an active role in changing their sensory systems and also playing a role in the process of neuroplastic healing. And this is exactly what I teach the coaches and clinicians that come through the nervous system certification course. Now, one of the most helpful neuroeducational concepts that you can teach your clients is overprotective neuroception. So if you imagine a guard dog that's circling a house protecting it, and it barks at every single noise. It barks at every car that goes past. It barks when the wind blows and the leaves rustle. And it's in a state where it's hypervigilant and on guard all of the time. And this is what can happen to our clients' nervous systems following traumatic stress through the process of neuroplasticity. Once they understand the difference between having a nervous system that's overprotective, like a guard dog that's on the lookout for danger, as opposed to having trauma stored in their body that they need to get out, they see themselves in a different way. Now, depending on your client, you may teach them about the key areas that are involved with this process of overprotective neuroception. So firstly, you could teach them about the amygdala or the alarm system. And this is the part of the brain that is looking for that threat, but it is living outside of conscious awareness in the survival brain. Once your client understands that, they see that these patterns or responses is not actually something that they're choosing. They also learn that the communication of information from their body, such as the vagus nerve or that travels along the spinal cord to the lower centers in the brain, is actually what's communicating to the survival brain. And so they learn, well, I can use these bottom-up resources to help send different messages to the amygdala. The second part of the brain you might teach them about is the hippocampus, or the memory context center. Now, normally this part of the brain helps you process memories with context and time. But in times of traumatic stress, it can interrupt the function of the hippocampus. Now, this is a little bit like when you've gone out and had a few too many drinks and you can't quite remember what you said or did the night before. So because of hormones like adrenaline, the hippocampus can be interrupted from its function. So part of the work that we're doing is to help change those implicit memories, which are more like fragments or sensations, become integrated into part of the explicit memory system. So it becomes a part of your entire story rather than one chapter that we keep getting stuck on. The other part of the brain you can teach your clients about is the insula, or the sensory integration hub. Now, this is how we can explain to our clients the process of interoception with that communication of bodily signals from the vagus nerve coming up to the lower centers and then on to the insula. And the way that the insula is functioning or detecting those sensations determines if sensations are too loud or overwhelming, or if they're too quiet, and your client might have difficulty understanding their internal sensations to proactively manage their nervous system state, but also their emotions. When you effectively communicate to your clients that their nervous system is overprotective and they understand the analogy of the guard dog, they immediately stop the self-blame. We know that shame can drive more nervous system dysregulation, and that shame actually maps to the dorsal vagal state of the nervous system. So neuroeducation, when delivered really well, can actually reduce the shame and help your client return back to regulation. Research shows that neuroeducation, when delivered skillfully, has a genuine regulatory power. When clients clearly understand the neurobiology behind their experiences, a really critical shift can take place that leads to top-down regulation, and it changes the way the brain predicts what's going to happen next. When you help your clients understand the science behind their experiences, you're actually strengthening the neural networks that play a role in top-down emotional regulation. Research has shown that this reduces amygdala activity and increases feelings of safety and control. That education alone has actually been what's enabled that guard dog to just calm down a little bit and relax. This is truly how we build internal agency for our clients. And I like to think that agency and autonomy are the opposite to what people experience in times of traumatic stress, when they feel powerless and helpless. When clients learn that their racing heart, the tension in their jaw, and the way that they might react before they've had a chance to think things through comes from the sympathetic nervous system's activation, they stop feeling like something's wrong with them. This is a really powerful reappraisal where a client might say to you, since you taught me about the states of my nervous system, I recognized the other day that feeling of panic that came about as it has for months. I felt that urgency, I felt my breath change, and I recognized that it was part of my sympathetic nervous system state. Then I was able to use the resource that you taught me on exteroceptive sensory training, and I brought my heightened activation back down. So effectively, you've given them what they need to understand where they're at any given moment, but to also play a role in downregulating their own nervous system. You've shifted them through your education from feeling like a helpless passenger in the back seat to now putting their hands on the steering wheel and being back in control. When your clients understand what state they're in, they're actually retraining their interoceptive system, or the 8th sensory system. It's though they're able to change the volume control from being too loud or too quiet back to a volume that they can accurately hear. This can create neuroplastic healing in the region of the insula. And for many people, their interoceptive accuracy will then improve. Instead of a racing heart immediately being appraised as something terrible is going to happen, the world's going to fall apart again like it once did, they're able to be with these sensations in the present moment and see reality as it actually is. This reappraisal is what sends calming signals back down to the amygdala. And it's a little bit like a trainer saying to a dog, sit, lay down, and stay. The dog is able to finally relax and take a break from being on guard of the perimeter of the property. In a similar way, when you provide the right education at the right time, it's as though your client's nervous system can also take a break. And this is a big part of restoring both their physical and their psychological health. Another powerful piece of neuroeducation goes beyond explaining brain regions to helping your clients really understand the interconnected nature of the nervous system with many of their other systems. And this is why we can see some chronic symptoms that last following traumatic stress. Now, this is very different to saying trauma is stored in your body and your client thinking, well, is it in my hip and I need to take it out? This is really looking at things like the neuroimmune system and its role in inflammation, the neuroendocrine system and the way that we see our hormonal system change, but also the connection like the gut-brain axis between the vagus nerve and the gut that sends different messages to the brain. These are some of the most empowering things we can help our clients to understand and to make it really clear to them why nervous system regulation is something that you're including and really getting them started with. For instance, if you have a client with irritable bowel syndrome or gut issues, without proper neuroeducation, it's going to be hard for them to come on board to using nervous system resources when they're telling you, but the problem is in my gut and I need to cut out dairy. Your role is to be able to clearly explain to them in a two-way conversation how nervous system dysregulation can change the dynamics of the gut, to help them understand that motility changes, the secretions, the barrier of the gut, and how the vagus nerve and the enteric nervous system work together to change both our physical and emotional health. This is also true for your client who might be experiencing things like chronic or persistent pain, and educating them on how the nervous system and the immune system speak to each other so closely. And part of that overprotectiveness of the nervous system that we just covered can also help them understand how their pain levels increase the more protective their nervous system becomes. And part of what you want them to do when they're away from their session with you is include the things that help their nervous system relax, to feel safe, and to turn down the volume on that protective factor. When you skillfully deliver neuroeducation on the interconnectedness of the nervous system with other systems, you really encourage and empower your clients to make those lifestyle changes. So doing things like exteroceptive sensory training, or including movement that's going to help modulate pain through the immune system. The clearer your client understands things, the more engaged they'll be, the better results that they're going to have, and the more they're going to become raving advocates of your work. Many clients have given up on the possibility of change. And what we know from a nervous system perspective is that the story that they tell themselves follows the state that they're in. So for clients who may have had chronic symptoms, their story may be something like, I don't even know why we're bothering doing this. I've tried all of these things. I've seen lots of practitioners and it didn't get me anywhere. How are you going to be any different? When you work through a nervous system lens and you can listen for that language that gives you clues of the state your client's nervous system is in, you can help bring them back towards regulation and then look at ways to have, again, a two-way conversation about what beliefs they might hold. Their beliefs are really important because the brain and the nervous system work on prediction. So your client's brain and nervous system make predictions based off their past experiences. Now, some of this is happening outside of conscious awareness through the implicit memory system, and also comparing the current sensory information in the body and comparing that to what they might have experienced in the past. But a lot of this is conscious through thoughts, stories, beliefs, and narratives. And this is the part that you can make a big difference in if you have the skills to unpack this with your client, so you can bring their beliefs, the stories, or the language that they're using to describe their situation to light, help make them aware of it, and then together really explore if what they're saying or believing is actually true, and provide more accurate neuroeducation. So when we update these predictions that are both outside of our awareness, within the implicit memory system and the sensory systems, but also the conscious predictions that we hear through narrative, thoughts, or language, neuroplastic healing can actually take place, and we change the predictions. So you might imagine that you see a forest, and there's a pathway in that forest that's become really well worn. And it's the easiest path to take. But that path keeps taking your client to a place that they don't want to go. That's where the anxiety is, the agitation, the rage, but it could also be where the shutdown, isolation, and hopelessness is. In order to take our clients to a new place, we need to create a new clearing in that forest. And at first, that's going to take a lot of work. We need to cut down the branches, we need to clear some space, and we need to step down the grass again and again and again. And through proper neuroeducation, when our clients say they feel like giving up, we can explain to them this can be part of what the dorsal vagal state brings. It brings hopelessness. It makes you feel like quitting. It makes you feel stuck. And we can encourage them to come back towards regulation and look at their situation again. So our education plays a big role in ensuring that our clients are well aware of the work that it's going to take. There's no one and done when it comes to the nervous system, and saying that trauma is stored in the body and can be released in one session doesn't accurately show the work that it takes to clear that new path in the forest that will help our clients go again and again towards regulation. We can also tell our clients that over time, that old pathway will start to grow over, and it won't be the path that we're most likely to take anymore. So the power of your education around neuroplastic healing, as well as predictive coding, is so important to helping your clients stay engaged for the long term. But here's where most approaches fail. They don't meet their client exactly where they are at. So our role as coaches and clinicians is to be able to detect where our client is and what resource they might need, and when the right time to deliver that education is, when they're most primed to receive it. And that's why I created the trauma-sensitive sequencing framework, to give coaches and clinicians that real clear step-by-step framework that allows them to know what resource and what neuroeducation to deliver when, so that neuroplastic healing would take place. Now, when I've shared this kind of education through social media, people have said, well, my client is dysregulated, so their thinking brain is offline. This kind of education isn't going to work with them. And this is why we need a more sophisticated approach towards nervous system work. It needs to be sequenced, the order that we deliver our education and our resources. It needs to be state specific. It needs to be sensory specific. So does your client have sensations that are too big, or do they have sensations that are too small? Being able to adapt this to the individual that's in front of you is so important. And we want to tailor our explanations so that they land in a way that our client can really clearly understand and that matches their symptoms or matches what it is that they're struggling with. It's really about becoming person-centered. The beauty of neuroeducation is that it can also be adapted to use in group settings. And this is one of the most powerful ways for people to learn about what's happening within their own brain and body. In group settings, neuroeducation can bring powerful shared understanding. Your clients will realize they're not alone, and that sense of community often accelerates breakthroughs. This gives you the ability to expand the way that you work and to be more impactful. Quality education can transform mysterious and frightening symptoms into something that your patients and clients can clearly understand, and that in itself will reduce threat and reduce the anxiety and overprotectiveness of the nervous system. Whilst trauma is stored in the body might serve as a starting point to communicate things like why mindset strategies often fall short when we're dysregulated, real healing begins when we embrace the complexities and give our clients a real understanding of what's happening. This isn't about unnecessary complication. It's about respecting your client's capacity for understanding, for growth, for learning, and for change. When we provide accurate, empowering education, we equip them with tools that will last well beyond our sessions. We help them understand the lifestyle factors or the things that they can implement outside of their time with you that will nurture their nervous system to move towards regulation. When practitioners do this well, they thrive. It brings in the 3 C's of confidence, clarity, and also credibility. Your clients begin to trust you more. They know that you understand their experience and they know that you're skilled in this area when you deliver education in a way that meets them where they're at and is tied to their symptoms and what's meaningful for them. So in summary, neuroeducation is transformative because it reduces shame about what people are experiencing, and that in itself brings regulation. It helps your clients develop a literacy of their nervous system so they feel less out of control and mystified by what's happening. They have a way to map it and a framework to understand. It increases engagement when your clients clearly understand why they're implementing a certain resource. For instance, nervous system regulation for gut disorders. It fosters hope through the understanding of neuroplastic healing and how change can come about. It provides direct regulation through top-down processing, meaning you can bring emotional regulation to the networks involved with threat detection. Education on its own is an intervention when it's delivered skillfully. Rather than immediately reaching for a resource and hoping that it works and that your client will adhere to it, look at the education that you can use that will bring top-down regulation as well. When you embrace the complexities of neurobiology, your clients will be far more engaged and also excited to work with you. Quality education is just as much a part of the session as any resource, modality, or technique. And when it's delivered well, you're going to benefit your client well beyond your session with them.